To tell you what people are starting to realize. They're starting to realize that when they look at the totality of what's going on, it is an anti-human agenda. It's anti-human. You look at all the basics of human life necessary to survive, and they're after all of them. They're after the food.
Microsoft founder Bill Gates is the largest private owner of American farmland. Gates alone holds over 275,000 acres across 19 states.
Our government allowed two giant companies controlled by foreign governments to come in and acquire. One of them is controlled by the Chinese, and they bought Smithfield out of North Carolina, and the other one was a Brazilian company that came in and bought up one of the other major players. Why would we want to have an antagonist own 25% of our meat processing? It makes no sense.
They're controlling the water, and they're playing with the atmosphere. They're changing the atmosphere in many ways.
You want some figures? Okay, latest water test. Tested the rain. 13,100 micrograms per liter of aluminum in the rain in 2013. Normally, it should be 0. So 13,100 is pretty damn much, folks. It used to be 0. Then it was 100s in the 2000s. And then since 2010, it's into the 1000s and the latest 13,100. In the snow on Mount Shasta, pristine Mount Shasta, 61,000 feet. No, excuse me, 8,000 foot level, 61,000 micrograms per liter. 4 times the amount that is found in the soil up there. Where in the hell is this stuff coming from if it's not coming from the soil? You know, these tests are international in scope. We're seeing this all over the world, guys. Okay, pH of acid soils is 20 times more alkaline. The aluminum in the soil has doubled in the last 10 years. Aluminum blocks essential nutrients. I am unable in my garden to restore normal pH, and that's because nanoparticles are now in the circulatory systems of both plants and humans. So welcome, fellow guinea pigs. The collapse and decrease of agriculture is something I worry about even more than the previous info about autism and Alzheimer's.
They are transforming the electromagnetic field which we are living in into a completely different state. This is what the low orbit satellites, and they have permission, people like Musk, for tens of thousands of them. And the idea is to hit every single inch of the planet with this stuff. Why? Because they are creating a technological sub-reality. That's what the smart grid is. What does consciousness give off? What is consciousness at this level? It's electromagnetic. So what if the level of AI that is being connected to the human brain is not algorithmic AI. It's not learning AI even. What if it is the consciousness of this demonic level that's orchestrating this entire reality and simulation? What if it is being connected technologically by frequency interaction to us? So we become it. The assimilation of human consciousness into this controlling force. And that is what I say that AI connection to the human mind is really about.
Intelligence, we are summoning the demon.
Morning, Elon Musk announcing that for the first time, his company Neuralink has implanted a brain chip in a human. Musk saying the person is recovering well. Initial results show promising neuron spike detection. Neuralink's goal is to help paralysis patients communicate by connecting their brain to a computer.
The device is designed to interpret your neural activity so you can operate a computer or a smartphone by simply thinking.
Slide. What? No. What I claim was. Then I say, sir, that you don't know what you're talking about. Really? You know, who's to say that something is misinformation? Who's the arbiter of that? Is it the BBC? And
You're literally asking me?
Yes.
Well, no, you are the arbiter on Twitter, because you own Twitter.
Yes, I'm saying, who is to say that one person's misinformation is another person's information? The point at which you said that there is, this is misinformation, like, who is going to decide that?
You accept that misinformation can be dangerous, that it can cause real-world harms, that it can potentially cause...
Yes, and the point I'm trying to make is that the BBC itself has, at times, published things that are false. Do you agree that that has occurred?
I'm quite sure the BBC have said things before that turn out to not be true.
Correct.
It is, whatever it is, 100-year history, I'm quite sure.
Yes. Even if you aspire to be accurate, there are times when you will not be.
We've spoken to people very recently who were involved in moderation, and they just say there's not enough people to police this stuff, particularly around hate speech in the company. Is that
what hate speech are you talking about? I mean, you use Twitter,
right?
Do you see a rise in hate speech?
I mean,
just a personal anecdote. Like, what do you? I don't.
Personally, for you, I would see I get more of that kind of content. Yeah, personally, but I'm not going to talk to the rest of for the rest of Twitter.
You see more hate speech personally?
I would see more hateful content in that.
Content you don't like or hateful? What do you mean to describe a hateful thing?
Yeah, I mean, just content that will solicit a reaction, something that may include something that is slightly racist or slightly sexist, those kinds of things.
So you think if something is slightly sexist, it should be banned?
No,
is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying anything. I'm
just curious. I'm trying to understand what you mean by hateful content, and I'm asking for specific examples. And you just said that if something is slightly sexist, that's hateful content. Does that mean that it should be banned?
Well, you've asked me whether my feed, whether it's got less or more. I'd say it's got slightly more.
That's why I'm asking for examples. Can you name one example?
I honestly don't need. I
can't name a single example.
I'll tell you why, because I don't actually use that feed anymore, because I just don't particularly like it.
You said
a lot of people are quite similar. I only look
hang on a second. You said you've seen more hateful content, but you can't name a single example, not even one.
I'm not sure I've used that feed for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and
then how did you see the hateful content?
Because I've been using Twitter since you've taken it over for the last 6 months.
Okay, so then you must have at some point seen that hateful content. I'm asking for one example.
Right.
And you can't give a single one.
And I'm saying...
I say so that you don't know what you're talking about.
Really?
Yes, because you can't give me a single example of hateful content, not even one tweet. And yet you claimed that the hateful content was high.
Well...
That's a false.
No, what I claimed...
You just lied.
What I claimed was there are many organizations that say that kind of information is on the rise. Now, whether it has on my feed or not... I mean, right, and
literally
if you get something like the Strategic Dialogue Institute in the UK, they will say that. So
look, people will say all sorts of nonsense. I'm literally asking for a single example, and you can't name one.
Right, and as I've already said, I don't use that feed. But
then how would you know that?
I don't think this is getting anywhere.
You literally said you experienced more hateful content, and then couldn't name a single example.
Right, and as I said,
that's absurd.
I haven't actually looked at that feed.
Then how would you know this hateful content?
Because I'm saying that's what I saw a few weeks ago. I can't give you an exact example. Let's move on. We only have a certain amount of time. COVID misinformation.
Amazing.
You've changed the COVID misinformation.
Has BBC changed its COVID misinformation?
The BBC does not set the rules on Twitter, so I'm asking you.
No, I'm talking about the BBC's misinformation about COVID.
I'm literally asking you about, you changed the labels, the COVID misinformation labels. There used to be a policy, and then disappeared. Why do that?
Well, COVID is no longer an issue. Does the BBC hold itself at all responsible for misinformation regarding masking and side effects of vaccinations, and not reporting on that at all? And what about the fact that the BBC was put under pressure by the British government to change its editorial policy? Are you aware of that?
This is not an interview about the BBC.
Oh, so. You thought it wasn't?
This is not the first time that this type of censorship with this exact type of reasoning has been played on everyone. One of the reasons that we have the Bill of Rights, and one of the reasons the First Amendment is on there and it's first, is because this exact type of game was played on people before, in the lead up to the American Revolution. Case in point, proclamation by King Charles II from 1674, a proclamation to restrain the spreading of false news and licentious talking of matters of state and government.
Suppression of uncomfortable ideas may be common in religion or in politics, but it is not the path to knowledge, and there's no place for it in the endeavor of science.
To be something we needed to look at that triggered the extreme climate changes that we do see. Now what we do is we throw some type of an impact into the mix. It seems to fill gaps that were, at this point, still unexplained.
We were not stone then, but light. It was not our place to interfere. Yet we chose to try and help mankind. And when we disobeyed the Creator, He punished us.
Can shapeshift. We know that the dragon, the enemy Satan, can appear as an angel of light, not his true form. The Greek word, and this was taught to me by my good friend and brother who's no longer with us, Russ Dizdar. The Greek word is metaschismatisai. They have the ability to shapeshift and present themselves basically however they want to. Karen's handler, Karen Wilkinson, who we published her book, Stolen Seed, Evil Harvest. It's a must-read if you're into the alien abduction phenomena, because it's real. It's not demonic delusion. These people are taken. There is a breeding program that's going on. We talked about this in our fourth film, but then we link it later on in film number 6 on counter mutilations, and we show how they're inexorably tied together. But once again, I digress. So you've got fallen angels can shapeshift. They can appear pretty much as they want to. They can appear as your grandmother, your dead grandmother, if they choose to. Greys, the greys with the big heads and the almond eyes, there's no reproduction system that's there. They don't eat. So what are we looking at? In my opinion, these are avatars. They are essentially meat suits. They are biological constructs for the demons. What are demons? Demons are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. Let's back up. The seed of the dragon will be at war with the seed of the woman. So that's Genesis 3:15. That's the gateway to the rest of the biblical prophetic narrative. So the seed war erupts 3 chapters later. Fallen angels come down. We know that from the book of Enoch. 200 of them in the days of Jared on Mount Hermon. And by the way, Mount Hermon is Nephilim Central. That's where all the mischief, as Chuck Missler liked to call it, begins. That's the nexus. That's the starting point. So the Nephilim are the offspring of fallen angels and human women, creating a hybrid being known as the Nephilim. They were never supposed to be here. This is why the flood of Noah occurs. That's number 1. So the Greys, let me back up. The Nephilim perish in the flood. They become the disembodied spirits which roam the earth, i.e. demons. How do we know that? The book of Enoch. Those of you who have an issue with the book of Enoch, I'll just say this. Jude quotes the book of Enoch. It was obviously widely read in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd centuries. Jude's quoting from the book of Enoch. Is it part of our canon? Now it's not. But in the Ethiopian Bible, it precedes the book of Genesis. In my opinion, if you were going to keep one book from the people, you keep the book of Enoch. You're going to keep one book away from the people of the world. That's the book you keep out, because it tells you exactly what's going on. Fallen angels are coming down. They're grabbing the women. They're going into them multiple times. They're having children by them. These are hybrid beings known as the Nephilim. They are soulless. So you've got demons wandering the earth. They're earthbound. So what does the dragon do? The dragon knows that a demon, in order for a demon to manifest, has to inhabit a person, has to inhabit an animal or an object. So what does the dragon do? He creates the Greys. It's a biological construct. It's an avatar. How do we know this? Because experiencers, people who have been on board the ships, including Whitley Strieber, talks about seeing the Greys stacked up like cordwood, stacked up like chairs, okay? One on top of each other. And there is no reproduction system, as I said earlier. There doesn't seem to be a digestive system. So they're biological suits. They're expendable. I remember sitting down with the late David Flynn and talking to him about this, and he also agreed on that. So moving along, now you've got the giant of Kandahar, all right? And the giant of Kandahar, we don't know how old that thing is. According to the shooter and the eyewitnesses, the smell was so overpowering, people began to gag. It made them nauseous. So are we looking at a being that's 1,000 years old, 2,000 years old, 3,000 years old? And what about Bigfoot? So, Bigfoot, in my opinion, is a modern-day Nephilim. It's a hybrid. I believe that they are all have a nefarious agenda, in spite of what some people tell us. That's right now, with the evidence I have, that's what I'm going with. There's a very nefarious agenda when it comes to Bigfoot and Sasquatch. They also have the ability to pop in and pop out. The Kandahar giant allegedly have the same ability to bilocate from one place to another. Again, this comes from years of research, talking to whistleblowers, talking to people that have come up to me, and everything is very privy information. In other words, I can't divulge the source. But some of these people were embedded in special forces, and I'll just leave it at that. So let's walk through it. Fallen angels are fallen angels. They've come down and they create through grabbing the women and having sex with the women. Okay, and for some of you out there, you got a real problem with that. But that's what happens. They create a hybrid being known as the Nephilim. The flood happens. The Nephilim are wiped out. The disembodied spirits of a Nephilim are the demons that roam over the earth. Disembodied spirits, in order to manifest, need something to dwell in. A human being, a group of animals like the swine, where Jesus cast out legion from the man of the tombs, and they go into the swine, or an object. The giant of Kandahar, in my opinion, may be thousands of years old. In other words, we know that there's a diaspora when Joshua and Caleb go into the promised land. Are we looking at the diaspora of giants? Afghanistan is not that far away from the Middle East. There is a cave system, allegedly, that is underneath this planet, and you can go from one part of the planet to another. That giant and Kandahar came out of a cave, and more about that later. So you've got the Nephilim, the disembodied spirits, which become the demons, the grays, where the demons can inhabit those biological constructs, those suits, and they can manifest in this dimension. The giant of Kandahar, which can bilocate, and Sasquatch, Bigfoot, which also can bilocate. They come in and they come out. They're interdimensional entities.
Dates that they are giving us are incorrect. We used to have 13 months, 28 days, 1 day of rest, even in the Bible. So look, we have 13 lunar cycles, 28 days, 13 zodiac signs. Every turtle shell you'll find, 13 sections in the middle, and 28 notches along the side, all to keep us disconnected from these natural cycles of our realm. Listen to David Strait explain it more.
Our calendar is not quite right. We're supposed to have 13 months of 28 days, with one day, the day of resurrection, Easter, as a neutral day. That's our 365 days. We've actually got 13 constellations, not 12. This same calendar is very close to the Mayan calendar, but it's also very close to several ancient Sanskrit calendars. What does sept mean? 7. I thought that was the 9th month. What does oct mean? What does nov mean? What does dec mean? It's supposed to be the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th month. Jan is 11. Feb is 12. March is 13. April is our first month. Babies are born in the spring, the 1st of April, Easter. This is the start of our new year, start of spring, when the flowers start coming up, the grass starts coming up, the trees start leafing out, the babies are born. That's the first day. Our neutral day, day 1, the day we rest and celebrate the resurrection, the new beginning, the beginning of Christ. April is month 1. And then we lost a month in there. Where is it?
What false can you find? And there's lots in history. I was looking around the internet and came across the images of the 1893 Chicago World Exposition. And it blew my mind because it looked like ancient Rome in the middle of downtown Chicago. And as I looked at it further, well, here's another one in Philadelphia. Here's another one in St. Louis, in Buffalo, in San Francisco. And then as soon as they were done, they tore them all down and threw them in the garbage. That just told me there's something wrong with all of these. The story of the expositions is a gigantic lie. And I think it's so huge of a lie because I think they're right at a bridge point when so many things about the 1800s that seem strange and weird right as this sort of period ends of unbelievable strangeness, and all of a sudden these fairs spring up all over the world with impossible buildings we're talking about, which are colossal structures. Chicago built 700 acres of fair in supposedly less than 2 years. St. Louis built 1,200 acres of exposition buildings. One of the buildings in Chicago, the manufacturer's building, would house 300,000 people. There's a giant statue in the middle of the lagoon. It was called the Golden Lady, and it was known as the Statue of the Republic. It was 65 feet tall. They say it was covered in gold leaves that had copper underneath, but others speculate it was actually made out of solid gold. So you're talking 65-foot high, potentially solid gold statue. We're talking giant structures and looking like ancient Rome with towers and domes and columns and the most fine, ornate pieces to them in these record, unbelievable times. Then as soon as they're done, chuck them in the garbage. Like Jackson Park is a swamp. So supposedly they had to drive down tens of thousands of wooden stakes in order to support the weight of everything. They dug out massive lagoons, lakes. They had a canal system that ran through the entire exposition. They also had an above-ground electric train. An electric train, well, where's the electricity coming from? That's running around the park. They had a moving walkway down by the shore. Not enough people are asking, where does this technology come from?
Just to frame it, if I'm not mistaken, the Chicago Fair was the first time people had seen electric light.
Tesla's the one who got the electricity contract for the Chicago Exposition, and it was certainly more than all of the lights anyway that were in New York City at the time were at the Chicago Exposition.
Now, it must have been mind-blowing for most of those people who had only seen gaslight or candlelight at night to see that city lit up in such a way. Again, now, it was 1901. We are told, whether it's true or not, the idea of being able to electrically do anything hasn't been around that long.
And this fair is bizarre. This is supposed to be Tesla's fair, where he managed to somehow move electricity from Niagara Falls to Buffalo for the fair. No one's really explained how he actually did that. And at the middle of the fair is a 395-foot-high electrical tower, on top of which, of course, is a female golden statue called the Goddess of Light. That this thing was lit up by, some suggest, 500,000 electric light bulbs. Again, when you look at the photos of this thing, it's just, where do they really get the power from?
I mean, think of what it would take today if you had a place with no electricity and no way to pipe it in, the generators that would have to be built.
For example, there's a building that went up for the Barcelona Exposition in 1888. It was claimed to be the fastest built building in the world, 5,000 square meters, capacity for 2,000 guests, 600 rooms, 30 apartments, and it was supposed to be built in 53 days. This is supposed to be a time of horse and buggy. The 2-year building times are actually impossible unless the two most likely theories would be either A, they had a technology that they're not supposed to have, and it really was built in that time frame. Even if they built them, they had to build them out of marble and stone in record time, or the buildings were already there. They'd been there for hundreds or thousands of years, fixed up, refurbished, repainted, hence the term whitewashed, which is the term that was used for the Chicago Exposition, which was paint all the buildings with this brand new spray paint that they had just developed to spray paint all the buildings in record time, so you couldn't tell if anything was old or anything was new.
How long did these things tend to stay open? When they built these things supposedly over 2 years, which is the narrative, how long were they there for?
6 months.
6 months for the public to come.
And then what was amazing, for example, in St. Louis, 2 days after the fair ended, they brought in a demolition team from Chicago with explosives and blew the thing up. They actually used dynamite to blow it up, and they say threw it in landfills. Things like the World Fairs shows there was a time in our past, and even not that far in our past, where humans seem to be at a completely higher level. Human living and human knowledge were constructed into the buildings using cymatics, using sacred geometry. These fairs, they're so important to study because the history that we know right now as history was invented at the time these fairs were going on. One of their underlying nefarious purposes was to teach a historical narrative to the population that they were supposed to believe and agree with. And scarily, the world we're walking into today is in some way has its origins during the time of these fairs.
Who killed the man who invented a water-powered car? In 1996, Stanley Allen Mayer invented a car that could travel 180 kilometers on 1 gallon of water. His invention could change the world, and people flocked from all over the country to catch a glimpse of the car in action. However, that was when things took a turn for the worst. On March 21st, 1998, Stanley and his brother were at a restaurant with 2 potential foreign investors where he was served some cranberry juice. After taking a sip, his face turned pale, and he started to violently vomit. He ran out into the parking lot, where he yelled, "He poisoned me," and fell onto the ground dead. 1 week later, his garage was broken into, and his car was stolen, never to be seen again. His death was eventually ruled as a natural cause, but many believe that the people who ran the oil and gas industry was responsible for his death.
Hello. My name is Montague William III. And what I will tell you may well sound absurd, but the less who believe it, the better for me. For you see, I'm in banking and big industry. For many a year we have controlled your lives, while you all just struggle and suffer in strife. We created the things that you don't really need, your sports cars and fashions and plasma TVs. I remember it clearly how all this begun. Family secrets from father to son. Inherited knowledge that gives me the edge, while you people lie sleeping at night in your beds. We control the money that controls your lives. Whilst you worship false idols and wouldn't think twice about selling your souls for a place in the sun. These things that won't matter when your time is done. But as long as they're there to control the masses, I just sit back and consider my assets, safe in the knowledge that I have it all, while you common people are losing your jobs. You see, I just hold you in utter contempt. But the smile on my face, well, it makes me exempt. For I have the weapon of global TV, which gives us connection and invites empathy. You would really believe that we look out for you, while we bankers and brokers are only a few. But if you saw that, you'd take back the power. Hence, daily terrors to make you all cower. The panics, the crashes, the wars, and the illness that keep you from finding your spiritual wholeness. We rig the game, and we buy out both sides to keep you enslaved in your pitiful lives. So, go out and work as your body clock fades. And when it's all over, a few years from the grave, you'll look back on all this, and just then you'll see that your life was nothing, a mere fantasy. There are very few things that we don't now control. To have lawyers and police force was always a goal, doing our bidding while you march on the street. But they never realize that they're only just sheep. For real power resides in the hands of a few. You voted for parties. What more could you do? But what you don't know is they're one and the same. Old Gordon has passed good old David the reins, and you'll follow the leader who was put there by you. But your blood, it runs red, while our blood runs blue. But you simply don't see it's all part of the game. Another distraction, like money and fame. Get ready for wars in the name of the free. Vaccinations for illness that will never be. The assault on your children's impressionable minds. And a microchipped world. You'll put up no fight. Information suppression will keep you in tow. Depopulation of peasants was always our goal. But eugenics was not what we hoped it would be. Oh yes, it was us that funded Nazis. But as long as we own all the media too, what's really happening does not concern you. So just go on watching your plasma TV, and the world will be run by the ones you can't see.
This is where we hold them! This is where we fight! And these shield boys!
The moral to be drawn from this dangerous nightmare situation is a simple one. Don't let it happen. It depends on you.